Second part of chapter 12 is talking about additional supplier selection decisions. Although the word addition is used here, but they are very important decisions that we need to make before selecting the suppliers. Here is a list of these questions that each of them again are very important. The first one is, should we use a single source, dual source, or more than two? Or in other words, multiple sources. So this has been always a traditional question for procurement and supply office, that should we go with single supplier or multiple supplier. So we will have some slides to discuss about this issue. Next question is, should we buy from a manufacturer or a distributor? In some cases, you have this option to buy directly from a manufacturer, and sometimes you have the option to buy by some intermediate trade channels like distributors, wholesalers, or retailers. So this has been always a question, which one is better? So this is again a typical question that comes to mind of any company, and we want to find the best answer for that. Third question, where should the supply be located? Should we look for a national level, local, or regional one, or we should think about a kind of international one? So again, this is a very typical question that we will that any company needs to answer that before selecting the supplier. And depending on our organization, should this supplier be a small, medium, or large? The size of supplier comes with some pros and cons. So there are some benefits if your supplier is small. There are some challenges if your supplier is small, and also for medium and large. So in which circumstances going with small, medium, and large is the best for us? And the last question, if no supplier can be found, if you could not develop, if you could not find any supplier that fits our requirements, should we use supplier development? Should we go ahead and find a supplier and work together in order to develop the requirement, the capacity that fits our supply chain? Again, this is a very important decision and very critical and strategic, so we want to answer it in next slides. Okay, there are some arguments for the first question that we ask, should we go with a single supplier or multiple supplier? Again, this is a very, very important decision. In many industries, they have some challenges, and if they have decided with a single supplier, they have gone to wrong decisions. If they have decided with multiple one, also they have concluded to wrong decisions. So we have to look at our own capacities, our own requirement, and on our specifications, and find the best one that fits for us. So in order to answer if single supplier is the best for us, we should have a look at the following items if any of them works for us. The first one is called prior commitment. Okay, if we are already working with a single supplier and we are happy with that, and we have a long-term contract, for example, for them with them, so in this case, it really makes sense if we continue with that supplier again. So prior commitments is one of the main reasons. The second one is exclusivity, which means that supplier may be the only available source. In other words, we don't have any other option. So in this case, searching for a new supplier has no meaning. So we have only one choice, and that's what we are working. That's what we're supposed to work with. Okay. Next one is outstanding quality or service. Or in other words, there is a value that we are going to work with the current supplier. So remaining single supplier has some value for us. And so this is the best in the market. This is the best company that can provide raw material and parts and services for us. The fourth reason is order is too small to split. Okay, so we just need a few of them, a few raw material, a few parts or assemblies, or limited number of services. So in this case, it really doesn't make to start negotiation with a new one. The fifth reason is opportunities for discount or lower freight costs. So when you can accumulate all of your needs and put an order for a larger volume, so many of the suppliers give you some opportunity for discount, or because they are going to use economies of scale, the transportation could be cheaper for you and for the supplier as well. So in this case, it really makes sense if you continue with single supplier. Next reason is more important customer, more attention for supplier. If you're buying from a supplier that you are buying a majority of your products from that supplier, so supplier feels that you're giving more attention to that supplier. You are more valuable for that supplier. So in this case, that's a good reason to remain, because if you are a single supplier, if you are a single buyer and you are buying all of your items from a single supplier, suppliers think of it as a value, and they are ready to give you some advantages because of these decisions. But if you buy from 2, 3 different sources, because of loyalty issues, they may not give you such offers. Cost of the application prohibitive. So, in many cases, you're working with a supplier, and that supplier needs to invest in machineries, invest in spaces, invest in hiring high-level skilled people. So in these cases, the initial cost is very high when you're selecting a supplier from the supplier side. So it really doesn't make sense for a supplier, for a second supplier, to invest so much money so that they just have a small portion of that, a small portion of your orders. So initial cost is a very important reason that you remain single source. And the next one is easier to schedule deliveries. So when you're working with a single company, with a single supplier, and you have a small or limited number of staff in your procurement and supply management office, so it really makes it easier if you just work with a single supplier. So this issue, this reason could be changed if you have very advanced and high level procurement and supply office. Just in time, stockless buying or system contracting. Okay, each of them are very important. When you're using just in time, it means that you're going to reduce your inventory level. When you're going to reduce your inventory level, so you need to have a strategic supplier that is going to help you and going to send the products as soon as possible. The same for stockless buying or system contracting. So if you remember, stockless buying or system contracting are appropriate when you have a wide variety of products but limited number. In other words, I want everything, but maybe I want once a year. So the quantity is limited, but variety is very high. So in this case, a limited number of suppliers are ready to give you this service. So it really makes sense if you go with only a single supplier. Resources required for supplier relationship management. For sure, if you remember in supply chain management course, so if you want to do an appropriate services and if you want to manage the entire supply chain properly, one of the main processes, macro processes, is supplier relationship management. And in order to do that properly, you need to assign some resources, some people, some staff, some office, and some resources, money. So if you have so many suppliers, it means that you should spend a lot of money and hire many people. So having limited number of suppliers really help you to save those costs. Okay, and finally, prerequisite to partnering. If you want to develop a long-term relationship with suppliers and you have them as a strategic part of your supply chain, so having a single supplier really makes sense. So these are all the reasons that we will go with a single sourcing. Oppositely, there are some good reasons that you may go with multiple sourcing, either two source or more than two source. The first one is a traditional practice. So many companies used to have multiple suppliers. Just in case that any of them fail, they can easily switch to the other one. So the first reason is our tradition that we want to develop multiple sources. The second one is keep suppliers on their toes. In other words, when you have multiple suppliers, they are going to be good listeners to whatever you say, and they don't want to be out of your business. So they will follow whatever you ask them. The next reason is assurance of supply. So this is a very good reason. Everybody knows that. So if any of the suppliers fail to admit and to commit to their promises to send you parts or services or provide services, so another one in short term can compensate the portion of the other one, so the failed one can help and it can work and can come back to its normal as soon as possible. So in long term, you won't lose money or customers. So assurance of supply is a very important reason. The fourth reason, capable of dealing with multiple suppliers efficiency. So if you are a company that can manage multiple suppliers properly and you have enough staff, you have enough technology, IT, ERP systems. So in this case, it really makes sense that you use your own capacity, you use your high skilled level personnel to manage multiple suppliers. So you have capability, why you shouldn't use that? Next one is avoid supplier dependence on one customer. So this is also a very good reason that helps that the supplier develop itself as well. Because if they just work with you, they won't work on developing their capability, be risk takers, work with the other suppliers. So working with multiple supplier also helps supplier to develop themselves. Obtain a greater degree of volume flexibility. So if you want to increase the capacity, decrease the capacity, so all of them depends on having multiple suppliers. So if you want to rapidly go to a new market because you're already using multiple suppliers, they are going to support you, and by a little push to either of them, they are going to help you to submit and uh, to commit your promises. Backup arrangement. So this is also a good reason. If you have 2, 3 different suppliers that they are officially working with one product for you, however, they can easily switch their production line to the product that the other one can make it. So it's a kind of backup plan. So it's true that they are not making that product right now, but they can easily switch to that. So in this case, that's a good reason that you work with multiple ones. For example, if you have a supplier that is making part A, another supplier can make part B. But the first supplier can develop its supply chain, can chain its production line very fast, that can also make A and B. So if supplier 2 fails, supplier 1 can easily make part A and B for us. So that's called backup arrangement. The next reason is strategic considerations. For example, military preparedness. So for military, you cannot save money. You should be always ready. You should make sure that if one of the factories, one of the suppliers cannot meet their commitment, you can easily switch to the other one. And this is a very good reason that uh, when the item is strategic, you may think of that. And the same issue is, if I want to bring the example of nowadays, is COVID-19. So, for example, Canada has started negotiation with multiple vaccine providers. So they are not gonna, because health is a strategic issue, they are not gonna work with only one company. They need multiple suppliers. Okay, government regulations. Sometimes government asks you explicitly that you should work with multiple suppliers. For example, you should buy from veteran-owned companies you should buy from women's owned and operated suppliers. So that's another reason that you may go with multiple suppliers. Limited supplier capacity. So I am working with a supplier that has limited capacity. I have no any other option. I should go with the second, third, and fourth one. So that's another good reason. Opportunity to test a new supplier. It always brings you value. If you start working with a new supplier, maybe the new supplier could give you better opportunity, better technology, better market analysis, and as a result of that, you will have better output. And supplier market volatility. So because the market is very uh, risky and there is very uncertainty in the market, so it's always good that you will work with multiple one. If any of them fails, you can easily switch to the other one, and you can also uh, take care of the risk related to fluctuations in demand. So these are all the reasons that we will go with multiple sourcing. Another additional but very important decision: should we buy from a manufacturer or a distributor? So in other words, should we buy directly from a manufacturer or we should buy from an intermediate trade channel like a distributor, wholesaler, or even retailer? So let's divide it in two parts. First part, when buying from a wholesaler, distributor, or intermediate trade channel is appropriate. When we need extra services, okay? Because normally they provide you some services like installation, consultation, visits, customer care. So these are all the reasons that you may buy from a intermediate trade channel. Cost saving when you do not need much. When you have limited requirement, when you have limited number of demand. So why you should go directly buy from a manufacturer? It really makes sense that you buy from intermediate channels like retailer, wholesaler, and distributor. Greater stock of goods rather than a manufacturer. Because a manufacturer is normally has limited capacity, but when you go with when you go with a distributor or wholesaler, they normally work with multiple manufacturers and you have more options. So in this case, it really makes sense that if you are looking for the best and you want to compare the products, buy from the retailer or wholesaler. And finally, when um, when you buy from wholesalers or distributors, because they are going to use economies of scale, they are buying in large volume, and also they are going to use in terms of transportation, they are going to use truckload, so they are going to save in terms of transportation costs and many other costs. So the final product would be cheaper for you if you buy from a wholesaler or distributor. At the same time, there are enough reasons that you can buy from manufacturers. So there are some circumstances that really make sense that you buy from manufacturer. The first reason that you may do that is that the volume that you want, the volume of demand is very high from your side. You want a lot of these items. So it makes sense that you buy directly from manufacturer. Second one, shipment can be made directly from original manufacturer. Okay, when there is a capability within a manufacturer that they can deliver the products directly to your location, so again, that's a good reason that you may go with buying with a manufacturer, because you can save the cost in terms of transportation, and you're skipping the stock of the items in the warehouses of wholesalers and retailers. So there are some benefits with that. And sometimes the products could be expired if they go longer in the intermediate trade channels. So you prefer not to do that, and you will go with manufacturers. And finally, not selling efforts or service is rendered. So you don't need extra services. You don't need installation. You have enough experts in your system, in your factory, and you can do it by yourself. So why you should go through intermediate channels? So these are the reasons that you may go with the manufacturer. Another important decision: where should we look for suppliers? Should we go with offshore resources, or we should go with onshore resources? So let's review them one by one. Onshore resources include the suppliers that are in local, regional, and national level. So everything within our country. So traditionally was preferred due to economic reasons, because the in traditional level in traditional reasons, maybe 50 years ago, 60 years ago, there was lots of companies that are working, and the transportation was very weak. So in order to save the transportation costs, you prefer to buy from local resources or national resources. And also in terms of skills, in North America, we mostly had the highest level of skill across the globe. So we didn't need to buy from other countries, because it would be very costly and expensive, and their technology levels was not very high. So why we should buy from them? So all of them are called the kind of economic reasons that buying from onshore resources would really make it cheaper. However, everything is changed nowadays. We have better communication and transportation systems, and as a result of that, we can save the cost if we buy from faraway resources or faraway suppliers. So the tradition has been changed. Another reason for buying from onshore resources is just in time. In just in time, we are reducing our inventory level. As a result of that, we need to be close to the supplier. So we cannot wait for a long time that a part comes from Asia if we are choosing just in time. So that's a very strong reason that you may go with onshore. And another one is commitment to local. So you're working in this area, you're breathing in this area. You have some commitment to the people who are buying the stuff from you. So you want to be a loyal member of your society. So in this case, commitment to local really makes sense that you buy from local as well. So you will choose suppliers from local resources. And the last reason for buying onshore is closer to customers. So this is true, and the best example is Honda, if you remember in previous chapters. So Honda, instead of exporting the cars from another country to the customers, if they have enough customers in any market, they will establish a new uh, a new factory there, and they will choose the local suppliers from the destination. So in this case, they will be closer to customers and closer to suppliers. So buying from onshore resources really help Honda in order to achieve their goal, which is being closer to customers. Okay, at the same time, there are enough reasons that we will prefer to buy offshore. First of all, offshore can be divided to nearshore and farshore. Nearshore are the countries that have borders with us and they are pretty close to us. For example, for US, Mexico and Canada are nearshore. Farshore could be any country which is very far away from us, and it could be, for example, in Canada, we may buy from any Asian country. So they are farshore for us. So there are some reasons, again, due to communication and transportation improvements, we can have so many cost savings, quality, quantity, and even level of services that we may go with offshores. For example, call centers are one of the examples that they have been offshore to Asian countries. Okay, totally different than onshore and offshore, we have a new thing which is called reshoring, which means that reversing offshore decisions. So I have already decided to, for example, use an Asian country to do my products or services. Now I want to reverse it and do it inside my country or close to my province. So in this case, this is called reshoring. And this is a new trend. You know that in recent years, many countries have decided to go back to their own suppliers inside their country. So the reshoring is very common nowadays. So a good reason for that and a good example of that is some companies in US that they have decided to get their products back to their countries. And as a result of that, uh, for example, companies like Walmart, Apple, and Caterpillar have decided to use domestic US local manufacturers, or there is a trend to use to get their call centers back from Asian countries to American countries. So these are all the reasons for reshoring. Next important decision is that should we select a small, medium, or large supplier? Because each of them has its own characteristics. So small suppliers um, are appropriate in general when the price is less important than, first of all, flexibility. Small suppliers have a lot of flexibility. They can listen to you, they can customize your products and services, and they can provide you whatever you want. So they are a good source of customization and innovation as well. The next issue is that they are very good in speed response because they're local, then they are small, they don't have such bureaucratic organizational structure. They want to don't they want not to miss customers. So because of all of these reasons, they have very fast response to your inquiries. And finally, availability, because small suppliers are normally located and scattered in any area. You can find a small supplier in your local or provincial level, and because of that, availability is a very good reason that we may select small suppliers. Okay, at the same time, there are enough reasons that we should go with large suppliers. So in which circumstances large suppliers are good for us? The first case is high volume requirement. When you need lots of products or services, so it is out of the capacity of a small supplier. So you should go with large ones. Technology. Large suppliers have enough technologies, enough budget to invest in technologies. They may use very advanced technologies, and they are able to do that because they have money, expertise, capacity. So if technology matters for you, large suppliers are a good option. Quality. They normally have a very steady uh, quality levels. So because they have large contracts and their economic life really depends on their quality. So large suppliers are good in terms of quality. Total cost of ownership. Because they have some technologies, they have some tools and expertise, total cost of ownerships in large suppliers is normally lower because they can provide you guarantee services, they can provide you training, they can replace the parts and services, they can give you consultation. So total cost of ownership is normally lower for large suppliers. And finally, more long-term stability and reducing the risk of supplier performance. Small suppliers normally are managed by a family-owned business, or they are mostly relying on one or two main people in that company. After a few years, if the founder just allocate the responsibility to next generation, normally it impacts their services. So they are not as reliable as large industries. So if you want a kind of stability in your uh, business and a stabilized supply, so and reducing the risk of going to actually lack of supply. So large suppliers could be a good fit for your industry. So it's clear in which cases we will go with the small suppliers and in which cases we go with large suppliers. And medium suppliers are something in the middle. Okay, this is the last thing that we want to review, and that is, what if we cannot find any supplier? There is no supplier in the market that can provide us services or products based on our requirement. So before doing that, let's see what happens in a regular business. So in a regular business, everything starts from a supplier. So initiates the sale. So they will do some marketing, they will do some um, visiting, they will send some catalogs, they have their own websites. So many other sources of information. So everything starts and initiates by supplier. As a result of that, we as a purchaser or procurement office may look at some sources of information and we might be convinced that we should buy from the supplier. So our response would be supply. So we will ask them to supply the products for us. So this is the regular or normal cases. But in supplier development, something else happens that we call it the reverse marketing. And what's that? So everything starts from us, which is the company that wants the products or we want to purchase. We are purchasers. So we start the supply initiatives. We will approach the supplier and will ask them, this is what we need. This is our requirement. This is how much you should invest. And or proposal for the supplier should be enough convincing so that they start investment. For example, we would say in long term, we want to purchase blah blah amount of products and you will earn so much benefit. And by the way, if you don't work with us, even you can sell your products to the market and there are so many companies waiting for that product. So as a result of that, supplier may be convinced and they may respond with the sales. So they may provide us the products. And also there is a chance that they do not go with that and we should think another way. So anyway, that's what happens in supplier development or which we call reverse marketing. This is a necessary step if there is no any proper supplier. It normally happens with when we want to start a new product or we are going to a market that there is not enough supplier. In normal circumstances, if we are not on the edge of technology or we are not entering to a new market, so we really don't need to think about this option. But for advanced companies, it really makes sense to think about that. This slide wants to connect whatever we discussed so far, which are the criteria that we will choose different suppliers, with the next topic, which is supplier evaluation. And what are the criteria to select the suppliers. There is a very fundamental question here that is this supplier able to supply the purchaser's requirements satisfactorily in terms of strategically and operationally, and also in terms of short term and long term, or they are not able. Sometimes we will choose with the short term, they are good for short term, but in long term they fail. Or in terms of operationally, they can do it very well, but when it goes with entering to new markets, thinking about long term, and having some fundamental changes, they fail. So these are all the items that we should consider when we select a supplier. So by these questions, by this basic question, I want to jump to next next topic, which is actually related to evaluating potential sources.